What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of People Management Digest, the official podcast of Great Place to Work Canada. My name is Lucas Pesa. Today, we'll be talking to Manu Varma again. You guys probably remember him from an earlier conversation that we had about the policy of non-policy and creating a culture of accountability. This is going to be a follow-up interview to that previous conversation. So Manu, we build on a lot of the ideas that we discussed in the first conversation, and he's got a lot of great insights. So make sure you stick around for the whole thing. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of People Management Digest. My name is Lucas Pesa, and today I'm back for part 2 of our conversation with our friend Manu Varma. Manu, how you doing?
I am good. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. And obviously Manu is part of Traction on Demand, and he'll be helping us out in April on the 25th for the Great Place to Work conference in a panel discussion about the sort of, well, obviously what we'll be talking about today, which is the policy of non-policy and how employers can really start to think about allowing flexibility to their employees and accountabilities and all that kind of interesting stuff that's a bit, that can be met with a bit of skepticism, obviously, with managers in the sense that, there's a real, obviously, pressure amongst everybody's boss to produce results. And obviously people want to make sure that they provide the environments of utmost productivity and innovation for their employees. So, again, Manu, thanks for jumping on the interview with us.
My pleasure.
So, obviously, in our previous conversation, we were discussing the sort of context of the flexibility in management practices, accountability in management practices. My goal for this conversation is to sort of take it to a step 2 in the sense of really defining specifically what you'll be speaking to on the panel, which is what is the sort of strategy of non-strategy, the policy of non-policy, however you want to define it. So I guess that's probably the best place for us to sort of start. So in terms of really defining what a policy of non-policy is for use of those words, how do you even define that?
Yeah. For me, it's about putting people first, trust first. And for us, we are a values-based kind of culture-driven company. So ethics are something that we hold near and dear to our heart. So for me, I think what's really driving this is policies are really created, in my mind, to address edge cases. They're to cover your ass, really. And so I really take great offense to using edge cases to drive these broad, sweeping generalizations for people. Mm-hmm. It doesn't allow people to be people. So by having a series of policies, I think it just doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to really be a people-focused organization, having a bunch of policies just doesn't make sense. And I know a lot of people, and trust me, I work with a ton of engineers and software engineers, yep. Right? And they love the black and the white, so that can be a little challenge, but realistically, life is about operating in the gray.
Yep.
Right? And I think we need to be able to bring that ability into the workplace. And is it challenging for some people that might be a bit more detail-oriented or really have a tough time with the judgment pieces? But ultimately, it is about putting people first and trusting first and giving them the opportunity. And if there is a mistake, no big deal. No one died.
Yep.
We're not saving lives.
Yep.
And, and I always say, we don't have any policies at Traction. We don't. I have one, and it's don't be stupid. And I think that everybody uses their common sense, and we're able to really move forward. So for us, it's really just about putting people first.
Yeah.
And when I put people first, and I treat them as individuals and treat them as adults, they respond as such. If I treat them like children, they're going to respond as children. So that's kind of the underpinnings for me.
Absolutely, yeah. It's almost, it's interesting. I think in our previous conversation, we were talking a little bit about time management and accountability of employees, that kind of thing. And, I was speaking about this with a friend of mine relatively recently, and the question was, sort of what is more valuable, time or output, so to speak. So I think that's an interesting dichotomy for managers to have to balance these days is, allowing people, is it really as beneficial to keep people in the office for, a set number of hours of the day or is it more important to focus on potentially not necessarily working less, but working in a way that is more measured by results by output as opposed to results by time, so to speak? But that's an interesting way to think of it for sure.
Firm believer in that. I mean, we definitely, it's just, yeah, do we have office hours? Sure we do, but
Yeah.
it's never this question of, oh my God, did you get here at 8:45? What
Yeah.
time did you leave?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. Output is so important. And to your point, yeah, we all work hard, but why don't we work a bit smarter? And if you can get around by using kind of reusable IP and find quicker ways to do things, do I necessarily need to be at my chair to 5:01 and show up? Hey, my boss, I'm the last person here. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I remember being in the workforce, and that was it.
Yeah.
Be the first person in the office, be the last person in the office.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, fair enough. I like your point about the not the only rule, but the main rule is just don't be an idiot or don't be stupid. I like that one.
Right. It's amazing how much that encompasses.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I'm sure managers, are challenged, even managers who are trying to implement this sort of a policy of, accountability and flexibility and sort of onus on employees themselves. I'm sure one of the sort of balancing acts is trying to, really understand what the challenges are, because obviously, like any policy that's meant to serve a certain purpose, it can be sort of taken advantage of or whatever the case may be. And I'm sure to a certain extent, that's one thing managers are worried about, like, making sure that people are given flexibility, but not necessarily, given the opportunity to abuse that kind of flexibility. So what are, in your estimation, have you experienced any real, I guess, challenges, when it comes to actually allowing employees to govern, whether it's their own work experience or their own, working style? Have you experienced any challenges with allowing flexibility to the workforce?
And you know what? At Traction, I have not. And I think that's because I think we control this up front.
Yep.
In terms of the way we hire. So we kind of crowdsource our hiring. So anybody that comes in the organization in a kind of a 3-step interview process,
Yep.
They meet between up to 10 tractionites, we call us, that kind of have to give their all unanimous thumbs up to the people. So what we're looking for is people that are actually accountable and entrepreneurial and take responsibility. And kind of the line that we ask them is, if you were going to open up your own startup, would you hire this person and you think they'd have your back? So I've never really seen any challenges allowing people to govern their own time. And I think if we look out in kind of the whole macroeconomic world that we're looking at, I kind of think of this concept of like an adaptive enterprise. And companies and managers need to be more adaptive when they're seeing things like Uber, where people are rating their drivers and drivers are rating their people. They have to be able to give people the accountability and the autonomy to run with things, and not having policies enables people to work faster at their own pace that they like, and in their own rights. Right? I mean, if they've got kids and they want to work later and they want to leave the office early, great. Or if one of the things that we've experimented with, we have a ton of people that are from around the world, and we've kind of helped them with their work permits to come to Canada. But then obviously they've got families and such that are overseas. So enabling them to work overseas when they can go visit their family, but not just squander their vacation time just so it's hanging out with family, because we know that's not very restful.
Right.
But at least you can be with your family and work in maybe a different time zone, and being able to let them govern their own time is a great benefit.
Yep.
As long as they understand kind of what the end goals are and what the standards of service are in terms of our customer service methodology, and we're all for it. I can't think of a barrier to it. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I mean, for the life of me, I can't remember which article this was, but I was reading something recently that spoke to, it was an article that spoke a little bit about the growth of the sort of gig economy, for lack of a better word. I believe that's the phrase that they used. And if I'm not mistaken, within the next, I believe, 5 years, I don't want to say a percentage because I don't want to get it wrong, but there was quite a large percentage of work, I guess, that's going to be going around, where a large percentage of it will be either short-term contract or on by project basis. So it almost seems to me like there's a trend that's moving in the sense that there is almost more accountability growing, but not necessarily always within the exact format of a corporate design or an employer corporate brand. It almost seems to me that in some cases there's more, I guess, independence, and companies are having to manage obviously the fact that there's a large workforce that they're responsible for and that there are a lot of deliverables that have to be met, but also a lot of, I guess, contingent workers, if that's what you want to call them, are now present in the workforce, and companies almost have to navigate between their full-time workers and, workers that come in as contingency, who they work on a project by project basis, who are freelancers or who have their own business, whatever the case may be. So to me, it almost seems like, flexibility, and this kind of ties into what you were saying, how it almost seems like flexibility and, I guess, accountability is becoming more prevalent by individual now, just because of the sort of growth of the, I guess, if you want to call it the gig economy, because of, people doing independent projects, people having a lot more sort of smaller businesses, that kind of thing.
You totally see it out there, and there's an element of competition there too. I mean, so people are seeing that type of flexibility out in the marketplace, but yet a lot of people may not want to work independently in that whole gig economy that you mentioned.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
So people kind of find it kind of lonely, but still enjoy the flexibility. So it's a great opportunity for employers to capitalize on getting the best parts of that whole kind of working remotely on projects, but then also having giving the employee the social rewards of being part of a growing and fun culture.
Yeah, for sure. And, just to sort of add, because obviously we were just speaking about the sort of challenges that companies may sometimes experience as they're allowing more flexibility to their employees. But I mean, one question that I think is interesting is the people who I find will be most obviously cognizant of this type of a approach to employee management is obviously executives, the people who are at the top, who have the most responsibility and who are responsible for essentially not only delegating, but making sure everybody that's in their respective positions is doing their jobs. How would you say, how do you get buy-in from executives that a employer management style about flexibility and accountability, how do you get buy-in from executives that explain that that's actually a helpful and beneficial way to manage employees?
That's a tough one, right? Because depending upon industry and the types of cultures that exist in some more regulated industries and kind of old school networks and that type of thing.
Yep.
I mean, we don't have that problem because this is kind of a non-negotiable for us.
Yep.
But I think a way to get buy-in is really, at least from maybe HR folks or people that are in the people and culture business, is to kind of change the game and get involved in their businesses. I find a lot of people in human resources kind of take a back seat and are quite happy to sit in their, I'm going to get lambasted for this, but their corner offices and just kind of being the policy police and not really adding a ton of value to the business outside of maybe recruiting and maybe terminations. And I think it's hard to advocate. We all can agree that this is a beneficial management style, and maybe managers may not have the time to kind of push this initiatives forward. But I think human resources people need to get their noses in the business. They need to understand the business, and by using that vehicle of showing, hey, I get what the business is, so the executives will buy in. That we automatically have a place at the table where you can put forward these types of initiatives so that executives have peace of mind of knowing that this isn't going to come at a cost to the business. We're still going to be having high output, but also a happier workforce and a more productive workforce. Yeah, they may not be sitting at their desk from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But they're going to be doing way more above and beyond what the expectations are.
Yeah, no, fair enough, 100%. And one of the sort of last points that I wanted to bring up with you, because obviously, not just when it comes to people management, but when it comes to any sort of business shift or movement or any kind of enterprise that involves adjusting the way business is done or whatever the case may be, there's always a sort of, I guess, a set of steps that people look for in terms of how to actually do this area of business, how to successfully get a program off its feet, that kind of thing. So when it comes to implementing something like a policy of flexibility, a policy of accountability, flexibility of, or a sort of policy of non-policy, what are the first steps when really implementing a policy like that? Do you have to have, I mean, obviously when you have a culture that really vets people to make sure that they're aligned to what the organization is trying to achieve, that helps. But are there any sort of defined first steps that organizations can or should take when it comes to actually implementing a policy of flexibility or accountability?
Yeah, absolutely. I think values, first and foremost, the company values have to be articulated.
Yep.
And you have to buy into it. And there has to be a maniacal commitment to what those values are that can help guide that behavior that follows. And I think the misnomers out there is that we'll say, well, without policy, it's not fair. But again, going back to the fact that we do need to be able to operate in the gray, and we don't treat people all the same way because we're not all the same. We're in different stages. We're in different roles. So being able to operate in that gray becomes much easier to do when you have this values base of, hey, yeah, we all woven the same. We're all very different people. How those values might manifest themselves in terms of behavior could be different, and that gives us that kind of diversity strength. But I think the first step is just having that real maniacal commitment to values just makes it so much easier to move forward because we can all agree why we're here and the choice that we're made to come to work today and moving forward. That just makes having this whole concept of no policy so much easier because we have the structure beneath us of the values, mission, vision behind us, so we can all buy into and believe something and have that rallying cry and get like, oh, I get it.
Yep, 100%. No, I understand what you mean. Well, Manu, again, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast with us. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I think that I'm personally really looking forward to the panel discussion that's going to take place. That sort of talks about all of these different management styles and how a corporate culture of flexibility and accountability can be implemented, how to implement it, and the sort of challenges. And I'm sure you guys will face a few questions from the audience when that comes around. So I'm sure you can handle it though. So I got faith in you.
Well, thanks for your time, Lucas. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for those who want to check out Traction on Demand, you can give them a follow on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want to obviously reach Manu Varma, you can find him on LinkedIn as well. And you can follow them through their website at tractionondemand.com. And if you want to follow Great Place to Work, make sure you check out our website at greatplacetowork.ca and give us a follow on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. For those interested in coming to our April 25th conference taking place here in Toronto, we are obviously approved for 6 hours of HRPA credits. So obviously if you want to come in and obviously listen to Manu and the panel and some of our other great speakers, there's obviously that benefit, but also if you want to earn some credits towards your designation, we have that as well. So we're more than excited to bring all that to you. Manu, thank you again for joining us, and I appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks again.